This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
This is Capital Connection. Fridays during the noon report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are, as always, Jason McGuire with New York Families and Michael Geer with the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Well, gentlemen, we've been off a couple weeks, but it's so great to have you with us today. So much to get to. We'll try to do it in 10 minutes. We'll jump right in with you, Jason. New York lawmakers passing another budget extender this week. State spending plan nearly a month late now. But you argue there are worse things than an on-time budget in Albany. What do you mean by that?
Well, there are. For example, when we do extenders, we're simply keeping spending at last year's level. Now, at some point, they're going to approve that, and spending is going to grow astronomically again. So as long as we have extenders, the spending is kept flat. The other thing is the budget tends to keep the legislature focused on those issues and not the other things that tend to not be good in our state. And so I appreciate the fact when legislators' minds and activities and time are tied up in budget activities and not necessarily on very liberal social ones that will hurt us here in the state of New York.
The big ugly, as you like to call it. Michael, the Commonwealth Court, huge ruling this week. I know it dismayed you and so many in Pennsylvania, this 4-3 decision by the Commonwealth Court that essentially lifts the ban on taxpayer-funded abortions. What are the ramifications of this ruling, and what are the chances it will be overturned on appeal?
It's a terrible ruling, one that we kind of anticipated might be coming from either the Commonwealth Court or the Supreme Court. Ramifications are very significant. Number one, forcing Pennsylvania taxpayers, including the millions of us who believe that abortion is the taking of an innocent human life, forcing us to pay for abortions with their tax dollars. But it goes well beyond that into declaring this so-called right to reproductive autonomy and basically creates the potential for any and all regulations, guidance, protections of women and babies that have been enacted in law being struck down and preventing future protection for the unborn. So it's a major challenge that we are looking for ways to fight.
Yeah, where in the state constitution, because I'm having a hard time finding it, where in the state constitution is there a line that guarantees a right to reproductive autonomy?
This is one of those ones like the Roe versus Wade decision, which was kind of pulled out of whole cloth, basically a political decision, a policy decision being made by jurists, by judges that shouldn't be making policy decisions.
Well, Jason, it's an election year, big election year, midterm election year, and we got some issues on that front to discuss. Congresswoman Claudia Tenney has threatened a lawsuit in May over the state's voter rolls. She thinks there's some funny business going on here. Is there a real need to investigate the voter registration system in the Empire State?
Well, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney is the founding member of the Election Integrity Caucus, and so she's been working hard and looking at these numbers, making sure that there is confidence in our system. And I do think we should look at those numbers. I don't want to discourage people from voting. I think that every election matters. I think that every vote matters. But I also believe that there are at least attempts at fraud in every election. And so it is a constant vigilance that we want to make sure that there is integrity in the election process. And I applaud Congresswoman Claudia Tenney's efforts to make sure that voters can be consistently sure that their vote is safe and secure.
All right. Well, there was a recent audit in Pennsylvania, Michael, on the motor voter system that's been in place for several years now. The Auditor General says it works, but there's room for improvement. What are some of the vulnerabilities associated with combining the voting process with getting a driver's license?
We're seeing sort of problems with the whole voter registration combined with the motor vehicle registration in a number of different ways. When we even look at the CDL licenses that are being granted, and we're finding those that are not citizens are granted CDL licenses that they can't read or speak English effectively. So there's problems there. there, and it's not a surprise that it's tying over into the motor voter situation where people come to get their driver's license, check a box, and next thing you know, PennDOT has granted them a voter registration. So as the Auditor General looked at it, saw there are problems. As Jason said, it's good to encourage voting, but we need to do it in a systematic way to prevent those who are not citizens from registering to vote. And we think the motor voter program creates problems in that regard.
Gotcha. Well, the second annual Family Structure Index went public this month. We talked about this at length last year when they did this for the first time. And this year, Jason, it ranks New York 44th in the nation when it comes to family stability. What are some of the metrics measured in this survey, and did New York fare better or worse than last year?
Yeah, so the Family Structure Index is a three-part statistical measurement that evaluates trends in fertility and family formation and family stability in each of the 50 states. This is something that has really been spearheaded by our allies and partners in Ohio at the Center for Christian Virtue and the Institute for Family Studies. Last year, New York came in with a number of 48, and so we came in near the bottom. We've moved up to number 44 this year, but not everything is in position. If the whole country is moving in the wrong direction, the alignment of where those numbers come in may not indicate everything.
Yeah.
For example, the greater number, if you will, is going down regarding married adults in New York, and yet children that are being raised by married parents has slightly increased. So there are some positives in these measurements, but also a lot of concern moving forward.
Yeah, it's really interesting to look at the numbers here, Mike. I know Pennsylvania ranked 34th in the nation this year, about 10 spots better than New York when it comes to family stability. But what were some of the key findings you noticed in the Family Structure Index, and was that ranking better than last year?
And we're pretty much at the same place that we were last year in terms of the ranking. The number that sticks out the most to me in terms of something that people are noticing in our society is the fertility rate, the replacement rate, if you will, for the next generations at 1.55 here in Pennsylvania, and replacement is 2.1 or a little bit better than that in terms of fertility. And what we're seeing then is the ramifications of that with colleges closing in Pennsylvania, with enrollment in public schools going down significantly, creating a situation where there's more cost per student because you have these buildings that are meant to host many more children that are in there, and we see it going off the cliff in the future. Yeah. And when you have the low fertility rates, you have situations like we see in Japan where they're creating and developing robots to take care of the elderly because there's not enough population coming in behind to take care of the aged and the infirm.
Yeah, unreal. And you even see countries like China now getting rid of their one-child policy. We have a recreation epidemic in this country right now, and encourage everyone to read that Family Structure Index report that's out there. Jason, real quickly, a new law in New York now bans employers from using credit history when making hiring decisions. Wonder if this applies to not-for-profits or faith-based groups, and do you support this law?
Well, it is going to apply to just about everybody in this state. But I think the greater concern is the fact that New York is moving to making it more and more challenging for employers, period. It was just a year or two ago that we actually said you cannot look at criminal background history in most employment hires here in the state of New York. Now you can't look at credit history. I wonder how long until we can no longer look at employment history before we consider whether or not to hire somebody.
Yeah, that's incredible when you think about it. And then, Michael, we'll end with you. The Pennsylvania House rolling out a series of hate crimes bills. I know that always concerns you. When they do that. This would significantly expand the power of the government to empower the so-called thought police. Why is this legislation so dangerous, and why do our listeners need to be paying attention to this?
Well, these hate crimes laws, or so-called hate crimes laws, put enhanced penalties or increased penalties on particular criminal acts based on when the government thinks there was some motivation motivated by hate. And that gets into, as you said, thought police. Kind of how does the government make this determination as to what was in your head? And what we've seen in some other jurisdictions where they have laws like this is that, and especially we're seeing in Europe and in Canada, where people hold a biblical values, the government may decide that those biblical values, or speaking of them or praying about them, somehow constitutes a hateful position against, let's say, someone in the LGBT community, next thing you know, they end up being prosecuted and punished as a result of that. So we think it's wrong, and we are actively opposing these hate crimes bills.
All right, that'll have to be the last word this week. But if folks have questions about any of the topics discussed on today's programs, or they'd simply like to learn more about New York families doing such a great work in the Empire State, Jason, where can they find you online?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
And stay informed on all the issues in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania Family Institute doing awesome work in Harrisburg. Michael, where can folks find you?
PAFamily.org.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.